about the injury. It's not about the injury. It's about the recovery. It's about the recovery.
Hi, my name is Patty Davidson, and welcome to the Paul Padda podcast. Today, I get the opportunity to fill in for Paul Padda and get to interview our wonderful guest, Jonathan Norman. Jonathan comes to us from the Southern Nevada Legal Aid Center, and I know I didn't say that exactly right, but you go ahead.
Legal Aid Center, Southern Nevada.
Yeah, I knew it was something like that.
You had all the words
right. I was close. So we're going to talk a little bit today about Jonathan himself and how he got to Las Vegas and the Legal Aid Center, and a little bit more about Legal Aid Center because it is such a wonderful organization that we are so happy to partner. We've got a partnership going because we have the fellowship, at least the law firm has a fellowship going on that's going to allow for the Legal Aid Center to hire another attorney for a much needed area of law and offer support. So Jonathan, what we usually do is start out a little bit and talk about you as an individual. Like, how did you get to Las Vegas?
So I grew up in about an hour east of Cincinnati, Ohio, in cornfield and soybean country. And then I did my undergrad at Xavier University in Cincinnati, which is a Jesuit Catholic university. Mm-hmm. And from there I went to the University of Cincinnati College of Law, which is the law school in Cincinnati. And when I was in law school, I did the Ohio Innocence Project, which is a year-long fellowship where you were investigating claims of actual innocence by inmates in the Ohio Department of Corrections. So you're looking for people who really didn't do it and you can prove it, not people when it was not a technicality. And after that, I was like, I can't do criminal law. That's what I thought I was going to do when I went to law school. And one of my friends for my second year, the summer, for the internship said there's an internship that says it's 90 miles from a Starbucks. And so I applied for that, and that was in Chinle, Arizona, and it was DNA People's Legal Services. And DNA stands for a really long Navajo word. But it means attorneys who are working for the revitalization of the people. And it's just a very typical legal aid. We would assist clients with anything they came in the door that was not personal injury and not criminal. And then there are some areas that, because of our funding sources coming from the federal government, we couldn't work on. So I was there for 4 years. I did the internship there, and then after I graduated from law school, I went to work for them as an attorney. So I was originally licensed in New Mexico. And after 4 years in a pretty remote part of the country, I was ready to be in a city. So my partner and I, we moved to Las Vegas. And I didn't realize at the time what a excellent legal aid was here in Las Vegas. But I interviewed with Janice Wolf and Barbara Buckley and some of the HR staff, and was offered a job at the Children's Attorneys Project.
So back up a little bit, just a little bit more about you.
Okay.
I'm always interested in what makes people choose their profession. What made you become an attorney?
There were no attorneys in my family, and I don't think I met an attorney until I was in law school. My dad teaches social justice at a Catholic high school and at a Catholic university, and my parents were always really involved in the community, and they weren't attorneys, but they were advocating for people in the Cincinnati area and where I grew up. And so I think when you think about, even though I didn't know an attorney, I think about attorneys, or I thought about them then as people who did make a difference. And so when I went to university, I had a professor who said, well, you should apply to law school. And so I went through all the tests and everything, and I was given a scholarship to the University of Cincinnati. And I just thought it was, at the time, I was pretty naive as to what practicing, having not met an attorney, would be like. But I thought those are people who can get in there and make a difference. And so that's kind of what, I think, how my parents seeing everything that they did and they stood for is why I went to law school.
Sounds like they were a big influence.
Yeah, definitely still are.
That's good. That's great. So tell me the difference between living in Cincinnati and Las Vegas.
Oh, it is night and day. Cincinnati's green, and everything grows. You don't have to do anything. I grew up in farm country, and they don't even irrigate their crops because it just rains. At the same time, Cincinnati is fairly. People out here sometimes call it back east. I never thought of it as east because I thought of the East Coast, but it is a lot more congested than it is out here. And Las Vegas and just the West generally is full of grand vistas, I would say. And it's also, it feels like a younger place in Las Vegas. So in Cincinnati, a lot of, you have generational politicians, and I don't know that that happens quite as much, or maybe I'm not in tune enough yet with it in Las Vegas, but it seems like a lot of people move here and are able to, do those things if they didn't come from a family that had a governor in their past or things like that.
I think that's probably true, except I feel that we might be moving in that direction where we're starting to see that because we're getting a little bit older.
Yeah.
So what was your biggest adjustment when you moved here?
The summers, I would
Yes,
say. Even when I was in northern New Mexico, they're at altitude, so they're 5,000 feet, and so you have much more mild temperatures, especially in the summer. And then, I had never traveled to Las Vegas as in my 20s. Like most people come here to take advantage of the Strip and all that, and I never had. So I think having so much entertainment available all the time has been really, really great, especially coming from rural New Mexico, and then just the summers and the heat. Yeah. So I just got through my second summer, so
you're almost there.
It gets easier.
They say no. They say it's so hot that once your blood boils, you'll never go back to anything else. You're just going to be cold everywhere. So tell me a little bit about the Children's Project.
So we represent kids in Clark County who are in foster care. There's about 3,500. It changes a little bit every day. Our goal is to be representing all of them, and I think we get to that goal, and then a few kids come in and a few go out, so we're right there. We of course have a tremendous partnership with the Bar Association, so we have a lot of volunteer attorneys from the community who take cases, and that's run through our pro bono project. So on my caseload, we have 26 attorneys at our office who only do abuse and neglect, representing kids in the system.
I don't think anyone really realizes what you all do, and I believe this was like a mission for Barbara Buckley. She's worked years and years to get this up and running. And so explain a little bit even the type of cases that you take.
Yeah, so we just celebrated our 20th year, so it's been, we started, I think, I heard Barbara give a speech, we started with one attorney, and now we're at 26. And the type of cases, it can range from a child that's born at the hospital substance exposed and is having withdrawals, and the parents have made have not undergone it. They don't have any of the things you would expect of people who are going to take home a baby. They don't have a home, so it can be resources, drug exposure. So we have those types of cases to the kids who are abused physically, kids who are abused sexually, children who witness domestic violence in the home. And so we get, or, just if a parent is not available, sometimes if one parent is out of the picture and the primary parent gets arrested, there's no one to take care of the child. So it can be the gamut from really, really, it's all serious, but it can be really serious abuse, physical abuse, to a parent is unavailable and there wasn't a grandparent or relative to step in.
So how do you become aware that these children need an attorney?
So our teams are divided up with the courtrooms. So I do removals from West Las Vegas, and then we also have two specialty areas. We do the Native American children, because there's a slightly different set of laws, and then we do the sex abuse cases for all of Las Vegas, so they get piped into our courtroom. So we're at within 72 hours of removing a child from their parents, the district attorney has to come before the judge, and the judge has to find that it was appropriate. And so we actually are at those initial hearings. At that time, we're just the Children's Attorneys Project, Legal Aid Center of Southern Nevada. And in that hearing, we're getting the first kind of look at the case, and then typically the judge will appoint CAP to represent the child. And then it goes to a supervisor, and it gets, depending on who has caseloads, it'll get assigned to an attorney. So we're involved from almost the very beginning.
So would I be correct in saying that you're there to protect the child?
Yes and no. We're there to protect their rights and their wishes, right?
Okay.
And this is like a key, I think, thing that people have a hard time understanding, especially sometimes foster parents and family members, is we represent the wishes of the children. So we're not operating to represent the best interest, which some states have that model. So we represent what a child wants. So you can imagine a lot of times kids don't want things that are good for them.
Right.
Oftentimes kids want to go back with a parent who has physically abused them. So you have to have a discussion with a child about what's realistic, and that sometimes if the child's really young, you have to talk to them about age-appropriate discussion. And typically what I'll say is that the parent is going to have some homework from the judge, and once they complete that homework and show that they're safe, the child will likely be reunited. So that's kind of how we approach that with really young kids.
So on an average for a year, how many children do you represent?
Right now I have 65 cases, and with some sibling groups in there, I probably have, between, I don't know the exact number, but around 100 kids or so. And then cases are always closing, and then new ones are being assigned. And we stay around 60 cases, I would say. So I don't know in the year how many of mine close and open, but a typical case, I would say, unfortunately, lasts about a year. So from the date of removal to when we're able to, find permanency, whether that's reunifying with mom and dad or one of the parents, or a guardianship, hopefully with a relative, or in some scenarios, termination of parental rights and adoption.
So I can imagine sometimes that's probably a little emotionally draining. So what keeps you motivated? What keeps you going?
It's one is the Legal Aid Center is a phenomenal place to work. And I can't stress enough what a great team it is. So I have great teammates on my small team, but in the broader legal aid as well. So we don't do, immigration, for example, but sometimes an immigration issue could come up in our cases, and we have, people we can call, or walk to their office who do immigration. So being part of that team, I would say is one of the things. And then also the kids, kids say the funniest things, and a lot of times we are, making a difference for them. So even when it is draining, you see what you're doing for those kids.
So, knowing that this was something that Barbara worked for a long time, there had to be a motivation for her to say there is such a need. So if these children didn't have an attorney to advocate for them or talk to them or represent them, what would happen?
One, it could be that their rights to be, a lot of times for kids, the most traumatic thing could be not necessarily being removed from their parents, but being removed from their siblings. So if a sibling group of 4 or 3 or 2 comes into care and we're not there, I think prior to the Children's Attorneys Project, it was easy to split those kids up and to have, one sibling there and 2 siblings over here in different foster homes. And, the uncertainty that not seeing your siblings creates for kids, I think, is extremely traumatic. And then there's a lot of instances where we accelerate the return of a child to a parent, or we keep them in their school of origin so that they have all this turmoil going on in their life and uncertainty, and the school sometimes is the one constant. It's the one consistent thing they have. And so it could be just keeping them in their school of origin. And, so those things, and also, getting our kids to come to court so that they can see the judge. And our judges are great. They go out of their way, I think, to talk with the kids and to try to engage them. And I always tell the kids, this is the person who's making decisions about your life right now. So giving them that voice in court, and sometimes it can be really simple things that we get. We could get them their cat back from, a parent, or just little property issues, and sometimes it can be big issues like opposing termination of parental rights or advocating for a fictive kin. So fictive kin is an adult that is important to the child that they know, but is not necessarily a relative. So getting them placed with a fictive kin. In some instances, the Department of Family Services won't approve placement with a fictive kin because of something in their past, and we can present that to the judge and get the judge to override that. And it keeps the kid in their most connected environment where they feel, safe when they're with that fictive kin. And usually it's the child telling us, this is who I want to be placed with, if I can't be with my parents right now.
The child's wishes.
Yes.
Okay. Well, this is really, really going great. It's a lot of good information, but right now we're going to take a short break because we have a segment here that Paul does, and it's called Paul Padda for the People. And so we're just going to take a couple-minute break, and he's going to give out a tip, a little bit of education. So.
All right, great.
Hi folks, this is Paul Padda for the People. You might be wondering, why is Paul holding a cell phone in one hand and a license plate in the other? As a personal injury attorney, I'm here to give you a tip. First of all, if you've been in a car accident, like most people, you're probably going to be a little shaken up and confused and not sure what to do. It's only several days later that you think, oh my gosh, I should have done this, I should have done that to document the car accident. Well, listen, if you've got a phone, you have the strongest weapon you could have on your side. Just take a picture of the other driver's license plate. With that information, when you come to see us or you go to see any other lawyer to bring a personal injury claim, you'll be able to get all the information you need in order to pursue your claim. And with the driver's license, we can go to DMV, we can find out who the owner of the vehicle is, we can find out what type of insurance coverage they have. So documenting what happens at the time of an accident is very important, and the most important piece of information you can get is the other driver's license plate number. This is Paul Padda for the People with another tip for you. Thank you.
Well, hi folks, and welcome back. Patty Davidson filling in for Paul Padda today, and with my guest Jonathan, and we're going to continue our talk on the Children's Attorney Project. Would that be correct?
Yes.
So we thought it would be really interesting because, everybody likes, you talk theory, you talk about what we do, this, that, and the other, but sometimes it's really nice to hear about true stories.
Yeah.
And so, if you maybe give us a couple examples of something that really, really stands out, and this is, why you really are passionate for what you do.
Yeah, absolutely. So I mentioned that we are at those initial hearings that are 72 hours after removal. So I'm going to change my kid's name for confidentiality reasons, so we'll call her Lily. She actually was at the hearing, and she was, I think she was 16 years old, and her mother had been arrested, and her father was out of the picture, so there wasn't anyone to care for her. So she had been placed at Child Haven, which is our congregate care facility here in Clark County. She wanted to go with her grandmother, her maternal grandmother. There were, initially, so the case came in, we were trying to find a fictive kin, so that placement here in Clark County, and the CPS worker, which is the initial investigative worker, was really great. And it was on a Tuesday, so that's a day that I'm in court the entire day. So I talked to the investigator and I said, can you find this fictive kin? And I don't think we had a last name, and I think we just had an address. So she drove, and it was on the outskirts of Vegas, so she drove up there. She wasn't able to find the person. She left business cards everywhere. So she calls me and says, I wasn't able to locate this person. I talked with Lily, and she said, well, I have my phone, but it's locked up at Child Haven because they take the kids' cell phones. And so I asked the marshal in our courtroom, I said, can we recall this case? And so we recalled the case, and I asked for the judge to order that the cell phone be released so we could get the phone number. So we did that. We weren't able to reach somebody on the phone. And so the CPS worker continued to reach out to the grandmother, and the grandmother was driving into town. And there were some other barriers to allowing placement. One was the school was wrapping up, and so we didn't want the child to miss her exams. And she was a pretty good student, A's and B's. And so we recalled the case again for the judge to overcome those barriers with immediate placement with grandma. And then I think we had to recall the case a third time at the end of the day, and the caseworker had reached out to the school, and the school had said that she could just come back towards the end of the summer and take her exams, and that it wouldn't work against her. And so at 5 o'clock, grandma got there, and we were able to have this child placed with grandmother that day. And, you know, had it not been for us there getting the case recalled and communicating with CPS, and that CPS investigator going, you know, above and beyond, that child would have remained at Child Haven. And the real concern we had is the CPS worker said, she will run. She will not stay there tonight. And, you know, that's a real danger in Las Vegas for kids to be on the street, essentially. And we hope that they're finding a safe place, but we don't know. And so if it wasn't for, you know, all those factors coming in, who knows how, you know, where that turned out. So that was just, you know, a 24-hour, like a little window where we had I think, a tremendous impact.
You know, stories like that are so good because most of the time we only hear the bad stuff. You know, we hear about Child Haven, oh, the terrible things that happen, you know, they're overcrowded, this, that, and the other. And so it's really, really good to hear a story like that. So do you have another one?
Yeah, and I do want to stress, like, we do, there is a lot of negative stuff about Child Haven, you know, a lot of it's warranted, but we work collaboratively with the Department of Family Services, and it is through good work on permanency workers and good work on investigations that helps us get a lot of the resolution for our clients. So I think that, you know, is really sometimes not said, certainly
That's right.
not in the newspaper.
No, definitely not.
So I had, let's see, I had two boys. Well, I have on my caseload a young man. He's 16, and he has, I'll call him Robert. He has autism, and he has an IEP, an individualized education plan, with the Clark County School District, but he has not received the services for his autism that would allow him to be functioning at a higher level. And so he came into care, and he was placed with a relative, and working with that relative, and he comes to court. And so, you know, he usually just sits kind of behind me, and he writes. I give him a legal pad and a pen, and he writes in his notepad, and he's writing lists of movies he wants to see. And often it's the same list, like he's written for me, you know, 10 times. And so the last time we were in court, he had started ABA therapy, which is like it's the preferred treatment program for kids with autism that helps them increase their, I would say, functionality, so they get to, you know, use money and make change. So they're learning all these things that are going to help them in life. And so I gave him the notepad, just like I always do, and I gave him a pen, and instead of writing out his list, he started writing out how he was feeling in that moment. And he had only been started, I mean, we were in ABA therapy for a month, and already to see that tremendous difference in how he was processing information and able to share who he was. And I think, you know, in his life and in this case, that's going to make a great difference. And it wasn't just easy, like, oh, we sign him up to get ABA therapy. We had to get a formal diagnosis. And again, the caseworker and the relative it was a collaborative effort to get him those services. And I think, the difference, he was told at one point, we were told that he would never be able to like handle money at all. And, he's able to make change now. He's able to process that and do it.
That's amazing. You're really talking life-changing moments now.
Yeah, I think for that young man, I think his life has been impacted just by connecting him to the services he probably should have had his whole life.
Right.
Yeah.
That's really, really great. Well, I never want to pass the opportunity to give some shout out to Legal Aid Center of Southern Nevada. So why don't you tell us a little bit about it? I don't think really most people realize that this is a very large law firm.
Yeah, so we have, I think we're probably at 70 lawyers now. Don't quote me on that number because we just hired 2 new cap attorneys at my office within the last 2 weeks. And the Legal Aid Center is a world-class law firm, and it's I can't imagine a better run legal aid in the country. And it allows us to retain really experienced attorneys. So I've been practicing for 6 years, and I'm probably, most of the attorneys I work with have way more experience than I do. And so the depth of the practice level is wonderful, and the mentorship. Like my immediate supervisors, Candace Barrs, she's a certified child welfare specialist, and has been practicing for, she wouldn't want me to say, but for a while. And so when you have, and you can always tell, like I think, how an organization is by asking people how long they've worked there. And at the Legal Aid Center of Southern Nevada, people have worked there a long time. And when we're hiring, most of the time it feels like we're not hiring to replace somebody who left, we're hiring because we're growing. And that's a testament to the leadership at the Legal Aid Center, to be able to expand to meet community needs and provide access to justice. Because, I always think if we can't get into, if a layperson trying to approach a legal issue is extremely difficult. Most attorneys practice in the same courtrooms in front of the same judges, and lay people may only, if they're lucky, have a couple interactions.
Right.
And so, access to justice is where that's the area the Legal Aid Center functions in, to provide those legal services to people who wouldn't have it otherwise.
I think everything you said is, a great shout out to that. But the other thing is Las Vegas should be proud of this.
Oh, absolutely.
This is, we get such a bad rap, for everything, all of our schools, social services, all this kind of stuff. And this is a diamond out there that nobody even realizes we have.
Yeah, I would stack the Legal Aid Center Southern Nevada up against any legal aid in the country. I think we have top flight attorneys and support staff, and our leadership is outstanding. The Children's Attorneys Project just won the National Association for the Counsel of Children just awarded us the #1 law firm for representing children in the country, and the Legal Aid Center is just phenomenal.
Well, that's a real congratulations.
Yeah,
that should be out there in the news.
Yes, definitely.
Well, Jonathan, thank you so much for
Yeah,
being on the
thank you
show.
for
We
having
really
me on.
appreciate it very much. Look forward to maybe you'll come back and visit again.
All right, thank you so much.
So, saying goodbye from Red Chim Studios, Paul Padda Podcast, and we will see you next time.
It's not about